know what really makes us mad is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to Punk Lotta Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we choose 1 year at random and select one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. And today we are joined by a guest. We have Brian Medlin of the band Desperate Living on the show, and they have a new EP available for pre-order on vinyl. It is the band's 2020 EP, City Sadness, and it is being released on vinyl for the first time on Noise Reel Records, which is a label run by Justin from the band If It Kills You, who we had on the show a couple years ago. So very cool record, very good EP, and this was a really fun conversation with Brian. And what are we talking about?
We are talking about the 2002 split album by Pageninetynine and Majority Rule, document number 12.
Yeah, big record. We were going to talk about it on our top splits episode, and I think we talked about it as a runner-up maybe, but we wound up ultimately cutting it for something else. But I'm glad we finally get to do this whole record for an episode, because both these bands are very massively important, maybe for our personal musical journey as well. So yeah, it was a fun conversation about this record.
Hinting at the conversation, Justin, I just saw someone else say the Pageninetynine side of the split is like if Pinback was Screamo.
Wow. Someone else
was thinking the same thing. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is okay. I don't feel like I'm alone then now with that statement. So that's interesting, which you'll hear more explanation of that as we get into it. But before we get into the show, though, if you head over to patreon.com/punklotopod, you get access to all of our weekly bonus audio, where last week, what did we do?
We did an I'm listening, right?
Yes, we did. We did. We certainly aren't recording this before we actually record the bonus audio. We would never do that. This is some time cop shit that we're doing here.
Other than literally every time we do this. No, that's not true.
The way we do it normally is we record our bonus audio, then our main episode. We've flip-flopped it this time, but yeah. Yeah. So this is how like WWF and WCW do like these big blocks of tapings for shows and then spread out those shows throughout like months of programming. Yeah. But yeah, hopefully fun conversation that we've yet to have. But you also get access to all of our other bonus audio. Metalcore Chronicles, I keep saying, I promise it's coming. I promise it is coming. I literally was about to record it this week, and then I found 3 EPs on SoulSeek that I couldn't find on YouTube or Spotify, which I should have just cut them, but I don't know. I'm going above and beyond with this series, I think. Maybe a mistake in the future, but as of right now, it's been fun. You can also sign up for our $5 producer tier, where that gets your name said on the show every single week. So this week, thank you to Zach in Oregon. Thank you to Jason W., writer of the newsletter Songs About Chocolate and Girls. Thank you to Dave Brown, host of the podcast One Band, 5 Songs. And thank you to Steve Long, host of the podcast Rebel Nerd Radio. So we appreciate you. And if you want your name said, sign up for that $5 tier. And with that tier, you also get access to a once-a-month exclusive bonus audio that we call Extra Play, dedicated to an EP. And as a member of this tier, you get to
Extra
vote.
Play?
That's what I called it.
Not extended play?
No, I called it Extra Play. Mainly because I forgot what EP stood for when I typed it out. And then I was like, oh, well, Extra Play works. It kind of works like a pinball. Or
like a pinball. Yeah. Claw machine, Extra Play.
Yeah.
There's a scratch off ticket. The Illinois Lottery has Extra Play scratchers, so it fits.
Yeah. So, as a producer, you also get to vote in what EP we are going to discuss on that bonus audio. So the way we do it is Dylan and I will each choose 2 options based on years that we've covered, and we put them in a poll and let you decide. So if you want to vote in that, if you are just a $1 patron right now and you want to vote in this, sign up for that $5 tier and you can vote on if we discuss Texas is the Reasons, self-titled EP, Fire Party's New Orleans Opera. Fire Party are a Discord band. I think, is it Amy? Is it Ian's wife is in Fire Party, I believe. We have Drug Church's Swell EP, which is like a very early Drug Church EP. And we have Cave-In's Tides of Tomorrow. So if you want to vote in that poll and decide which one we're going to talk about, join at that $5 tier.
No, I don't think Fire Party is Amy Farina. Is that her name?
I think that's her name.
No, Amy Farina was from
it's
The
Amy
Warmers.
It's Amy Pickering.
It's Amy Pickering.
Excuse me, Amy. Apologies. Wrong Amy. Wrong Discord Amy. I feel like it's an easy mistake to make. And then you can choose the album. We devote an entire episode if you join up at our $10 tier, which is a one-time $10 donation, and you get to choose the album. We devote an entire episode to. So that's all the plugging out of the way. We appreciate you all so much for sticking through it, and enjoy the show. So we are joined here by Brian Medlin of the band Desperate Living. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for doing the show. We were reached out to by Noise Reel Records to see if we'd be interested in having you on the show, and I gave the EP a listen, and I was like, hell yeah, let's get them on. So you are, like I said, playing in the band called Desperate Living, and you released an EP in 2020 called City Sadness, which was released digitally initially, and now is getting its very first vinyl pressing on Noise Reel Records, which friends of the show, Justin is in the band If It Kills You, who we had on the show a while back. So let's see, where should we start? Let's start with 2020. And the EP came out in July of 2020, which is smack dab in the middle of lockdown.
Yeah.
So I guess to get into that kind of headspace, what was it like releasing something then at that exact moment in time, if you could remember?
Yeah, releasing it then felt really, really good. It felt just really cathartic because we were putting out something that was noisy and pissed off, and that's how so many of us felt at the time. Everybody was taken to the streets and you know burning cars, burning it all down, and people were pissed off, and so it felt so right to be putting out something that sounded like that at that time.
Yeah, that was around the same time as a lot of the protests, and yeah, it was a kind of energizing period. I think it's because we were all essentially cooped up for months at that point, and when something that big and that important came up, that it was like we got to get out there and do it. So yeah, I kind of forgot about the timing of that, but yeah, that actually makes perfect sense to release a record like this at that point. Because for those who haven't heard it yet, we'll play a clip of your music in the intro. But for those who haven't heard it, I would describe it as like noise rock meets like post-hardcore. It's like a mix of like your AMREP style noise rock with some, let's see, like Discord, mid-90s Discord kind of Jawbox era sounding stuff. Does that feel like a pretty accurate comparison there?
It does. Yeah, I've heard those comparisons before. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like angry, pissed off music. So yeah, that was like the perfect time to release something like that. So I guess we can flash forward. So that came out in 2020, and now it's getting a vinyl treatment in 2025. So how did that all come about?
Simply from Noise Reel reaching out to us and asking. I was on his podcast. I forget when that was, but when our last EP came out, our last EP called Shame, came out in promotion of that. And so we just kind of met from there. And that might have been the first time. It might have been a similar fashion where he was reached out by Brutal Panda maybe. And then, or no, I'm sorry. That one was put out by Reptilian. So I guess it was a similar way. Like Reptilian probably reached out to him, and that might have been the first time that he heard us. But it was similar where he was just, he heard it and he was into it. And from what he told me, he was just like, yeah, I turned all the rest of my band onto you guys, and we're big fans now and everything. And he's just like, yeah, I would love to put it out. We love it. So it was just like a thumbs up all around. I was just like, let's talk to Brutal Panda, make sure that's cool, because they put it out digitally first. They gave the thumbs up, so it was easy as that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool that even though it was a couple years ago, just the fact that EP really, really spoke to him really shows like as lasting power. It's something that if you listen to it then, which 5 years ago is not that long ago, but listen to it then, listen to it now, it still feels super relevant and exciting to listen to. So that's really cool that he just dug it so much that he wanted to do it. They're a cool label. They do some really cool stuff over there. I really like Noise Reel and what they do over there.
Agreed.
So this was, let's go a little more into the background of the band. So you've all been making music for a while, it seems like. Members of the Minor Times, Ladder Devils. You were in a band called Person L, which was a post-starting line band. So how did Desperate Living kind of come together?
Well, I've always been making music since I was, a teenager with my friend Tim, who plays guitar in Desperate Living. This is like I've kind of like lost track. This is maybe our like fifth band or something we've done together. I mean, we did a band called Inkling when we were in high school. After that, we did the Minor Times. The Minor Times might have lasted the longest, I guess, of all the bands, and maybe Desperate Living is now like going to be. But yeah, and then I guess so. After the Minor Times, I did Personnel for a few years. I played drums in that, so I was playing drums in all of these bands that I'm naming. And that is when Tim started doing Ladder Devils with his brother, who was also in the Minor Times. And then I'm just trying to think of the whole like timeline here. Then we started doing a band called Legendary Divorce with his wife on vocals, and it was just like a natural progression. When Legendary Divorce ended, it kind of just turned into Desperate Living, I think, or I think we were just kind of like, we kind of just like kept writing songs. Like me and him just kind of never really stopped writing together ever. Like maybe the longest period we went without writing with each other was when I was doing Personnel, because I was kind of touring, like that was almost like a full-time band. But other than that, yeah, it was kind of just like, I've never stopped writing with him. So it was just a natural progression that this band started. And getting it started too with more people was really easy, because the drummer, our original drummer, was in Ladder Devils originally, and the bass player is like one of his best friends, or is his best friend, Scott. So it was real easy to just pick this band up, I should say.
Yeah. Well, that's cool to have like someone that you can kind of always work with. That's a cool relationship, to have as like a songwriter and musician. So that, yeah, I like that element of you two just playing together forever.
Yeah, and it's especially been really cool doing this band, because I've always been writing with him from behind the drum kit. And it was Legendary Divorce was I was playing drums in that band too. So this band is really the first band that I've been like, all right, now I'm playing guitar with you, for the first time. I was always doing it from behind the drums. So it's a different perspective, and I he's opening me up to, all kinds of different ideas and ways of playing, and hopefully I'm maybe doing the same with him.
Yeah. Was that a big shift for you? I mean, playing drums in most bands up to this point, I'd imagine switching to guitars was a challenge.
Definitely. It still feels like a challenge. I mean, compared to him, I always consider who I'm playing with as like that person is the lead guitarist, because I always just feel like everybody is better than me. But yeah, I guess it was during the minor times, maybe I kind of started playing solo, like writing kind of my own stuff. It's just like another project I've always been doing. And that's like wildly different. That's like a Neil Young, Elliott Smith kind of singer-songwriter stuff. But, so I guess I got used to playing guitar and vocals in front of people in that sense. But in a heavy music sense, yeah, it was pretty new. I did a band called Wives when Tim was doing Ladder Devils. I was doing that for a bit too. That was really my first foray into like punk rock, noisy, playing guitar and doing vocals, like frontman stuff. So I think at the start of Ladder Devils, gosh, there's so many bands. I'm sorry. The start of Desperate Living, I felt comfortable enough already from doing Wives for a few years. But like I said, it's still not a place where I'm completely comfortable. It's like I still just kind of look at myself as a drummer first, which is maybe weird to say because I haven't done it for so long. And and at this point, it's like maybe I've been doing the guitar thing for just as long now. I'm not really sure. I haven't done the math on that, but
yeah. So this EP that is getting the reissue was recorded with Mark Water, I believe. And looking at his catalog and the stuff that he's worked on, he's worked with artists like Kississippi, Katie Ellen, Hop Along, Second Grade. And the one thing I noticed, I was like, Desperate Living sounds nothing like any of those bands. And so was that something different for him as far as recording?
I believe it was, as far as I know. He might have done some other heavy bands, but we wanted to record at that studio. It's called Headroom in Philadelphia. And I think the way it kind of worked out, Scott kind of did the initial, our bass player did the initial like reaching out, but I think the way it kind of went down was they just kind of recommended Mark. They were just like, all right, you guys are like noisy and heavy. Like this guy loves to do, or maybe just wants to do heavy distorted stuff. So that was really how we met up with him. And man, oh man, I'm just like so glad we did, because I absolutely love working with him so much. And we ended up working with him again. He's just like, he's great to work with. And he just, I don't know, he's like what you want out of a engineer, producer, is just someone who's just like really excited, and he's just like really excited to try out all the ideas and wants to just try everything. You know what I mean? Like, let's, just that mindset of like, let's just try it, and whatever, if we don't like it, then we can delete it, but like, let's just lay it down. And I just really personally love that kind of attitude. And but as far as I know, it was like kind of new for him as far as the other bands that he worked with. And since he's been working now with like a lot of heavy bands, because he tells me all the time, he's just like, yeah, bands are reaching out to me all the time and just being like, we like that Desperate Living record, or we want it to sound like that Desperate Living record. So he's always telling me, it's just like that record, like, you know, changed my life, or, you know, I'm sure he's being very dramatic, but I just think it's really cool. And like I said, I'm just so glad that I met him, because we did the follow-up Desperate Living with him, and then I did a Wise record with him, and I want to do more with him.
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess, yeah, that could be the thing that like opens the door and really gives him an opportunity to work with the type of bands he probably hadn't had a chance before. I also think maybe recording more like indie emo singer-songwriter-y type kind of stuff that he had before gives him kind of like a fresh take on heavier music, maybe a little bit more focused on dynamics and things like that, because it sounds great. The whole both records that you did with him sound great. So it was a great choice.
Thanks. Yeah. He's this kind of the same way, where he does a band with his partner that's kind of got like this like, yeah, indie, like Sharon Van Etten, like using, you know, keyboards and like things. But then he also has this like almost doomy, you know, just like slow, noisy, loud band. So he's like me, where he has this like wide range of like things that he's into.
And then you had this mastered by Will Killingsworth of Orchid, Ampere, a million other bands fame. So I imagine that was pretty cool to have someone of that level master your record.
So cool. Mastering is this process that I don't understand at all. It's like just you send it away and then it comes back and it's just like, all right, great, it's like louder. But working with Will was like the first time where it was just like, where it didn't just come back louder, like it came back and with like this new kind of dynamic and feel to the whole record. And that can be scary because you know, you work so hard on it in the studio and it's like, all right, here's the final mix. So you want it to just basically sound like that, but louder. But yeah, he's really cool because he has like a sound that he has, and it's just like you have to go into it knowing that, like, it's just like you're gonna get this sound. I mean, ultimately too, I would recommend everybody go to him too, because you will not find a better price anywhere. He's the most just like punk rock dude in the world, of just kind of just like, because he was in bands, so he has that attitude of just like, I get it. Like, you spent so much money in the studio, you know, I'm just going to run it through my plugins and things like that. You don't need to spend like as much money as you did for the weeks or months or whatever you took to make the record. It shouldn't cost the same amount. So I don't want to make him sound like cheap in that sense, because
Right.
like the finished product is, like I said, is better than other people that I've mastered with. But no, he's amazing. He's awesome.
I love that it's like, so I went to school for audio and video production, and even I am like, what is mastering? Like, there's still a mystery to what mastering is, that most people are like, I don't know, we send it away and it comes back sounding better.
Just makes it sound good. Yeah. It's a bit, and I guess there's different philosophies on mastering. Like there's definitely the we'll just make it louder approach, and that's probably like the safest approach to mastering. But there's people like Will Killingsworth and like Jack Shirley, I think has a similar mindset of like, if they're gonna master it, they're gonna master it like as if they had ported it and mixed it, kind of like that was my experience working with Jack Shirley. Like, his mentality of it is like, I'm gonna make it sound like I recorded it, and without, you know, like completely stepping on the mix, you know, of what was done before, but just like, how can I push it just that little bit towards what I would do? And I think Will Killingsworth is probably similar to Jack Shirley in the way that he kind of fell into being a mastering guy, where they were like, well, we were mostly trying to just be able to record stuff, but then we figured, well, we need to save money, so I'll learn how to master it too. And then that just kind of like spun out into like, well, yeah, I'll master your record for cheap, because I have the equipment now to do it, because I learned how to do it for myself.
Yeah, because Will also does he like makes pedals and stuff too, and
Yeah.
I was gonna say like that's probably his passion. I don't want to like say what his passion is, but like I can tell like that's something he really enjoys doing.
Yeah, it is cool. But because I see his name on stuff all the time, and it's always like from like DIY bands, like smaller bands that you probably haven't heard yet, or it's like the first thing that band has put out, and his name is on it. So yeah, that lends an affordability, I guess, to his. You get a good product for a good price, and from a name that's like recognizable. So yeah, I can see why lots of people would go to him. And so you have another EP you mentioned called Shame, came out in 2022. And that's already now been a couple years. So is Desperate Living working on anything that you're allowed to talk about?
We have a new drummer. So we're in, I guess, like a transitional phase in that sense. We've been writing some new stuff, and then throwing it away, and then writing some other new stuff and throwing it away. It's been kind of weird actually recently because for that reason, I don't know. Tim and I, who like, do a lot of the writing together, I think we're just in this like new place where we're kind of just like, what do we want to sound like? Like we never really kind of asked that question before. Usually it just kind of came out, and it's different now. I could like speculate on like reasons why, but I don't know. It would be all speculation. I don't know. That's just where we're at.
Well, that could always lead to something fresh and exciting too for the band. So yeah, I mean, everybody's process is different too. So yeah, I'm very curious to hear what eventually you guys settle on.
Yeah, maybe that is it too. Maybe it's just like we're looking for something more fresh and exciting. I don't know. There's a lot of like newer bands that are out that are exciting us, and at the same time, a lot of the newer bands that are exciting us have like an older sound too, but with a new perspective. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I recommend everybody check it out. The new EP sounds great. Or the old new EP sounds great. The 2022 EP sounds great. Desperate Living Sound is just awesome. And yeah, definitely check it out. Noise Reel, I believe that this episode is going to come out the same week that it drops. Is that right? This episode is going up next week. So.
Oh no. We are shooting right now for May 1st. Pre-orders are available right now, but actual drop or shipments going out, I think we're looking more at May right now.
Okay, yeah, that sounds familiar because when I was initially talking to Justin, I think he said, he just said sometime in March. So yeah, okay, yeah. Okay. So I guess the pre-orders up.
It's possible now. He like wanted this to line up like with the pre-orders maybe.
Yeah, that probably makes the most amount of sense. But I'll make sure to include a link to that in the show notes so everybody can check it out. But yeah, so let's get into the rest of the show. So the premise of the show is we assign our guest a year and they choose a punk or punk adjacent album from that year for us to discuss. And I gave you the year 2002. And before we get into the record that you did select for us to talk about, I thought we would take a look at some other albums that came out that same year and maybe even discuss some records that you were considering. Was there anything else from 2002 that you were thinking about choosing?
Yeah, so I don't know if it was explained on other episodes, but you guys do a very like helpful thing. You send the Rate Your Music site with the keyword punk and just kind of see what comes up. And so that was really cool. That was really helpful. Yeah, I wanted to I guess pick something that maybe I could kind of like shed light on or just have like a little more of like a personal connection rather than something like the number one thing that came up on that list was Interpol.
Yeah.
Which I like it, but like I guess I don't have any like personal stories about it or anything like that. Yeah, I mean when I was going through, I guess just as far as like things in the top where I was just kind of like, oh, I should maybe like really do this. I really love the Trail of Dead record, Source Tags and Codes, Hot Snakes, Suicide Invoice. Also, gosh, I really love that. Really love that. Let's see, Mastodon Remission. I'm not like much of like a metal dude, but like that's like one of the best metal records. If you want to just call it metal, I don't know. The first time I heard that, I was just like, the drummer just like blew me away. Let's see, Canute and Tragedy. two awesome, like just super heavy, awesome records. They were probably the closest records of me just being like, I should do this. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
guess the record that I chose is just because it's like maybe anyway a little more under the radar. I guess maybe not like Canute and Tragedy, but as far as like Trail of Dead, Interpol, Hot Snakes,
Yeah.
Mastodon. You know?
Yeah, you may be the first person who's guested on our show that's considered a Canute record, because that's like great band, but it is funny that like that's not a name that tends to pop up whenever we give this list to people.
They are extremely underrated. That band really.
Say it again, Noah?
Sorry, for what it's worth, you're also like the first person I think who's ever considered a Mastodon record for the show, other than like
Oh yeah,
maybe,
okay.
maybe have considered it because I was really into those first few Mastodon records. Like, got into them right after Leviathan came out, so that was probably one that I've considered in the past where it's like, ooh, am I feeling nostalgic enough for this? Like, this is not going to appeal to most, like 95% of our listeners. Probably should pass on it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I guess I only had Remission and Leviathan, so I can't speak about Mastodon like outside of that. And it's like I got Leviathan just because it was like because Remission, like I like heard that record and it was awesome. But again, it's like it's more like metal than I usually would listen to.
It's funny, Justin and I were just talking about Mastodon recently because they're touring with
Coheed and Cambria.
Coheed, right? That's what we were looking at, and I was like, man, what is a Mastodon set list like right now? And like I found some from, they were just doing like a Leviathan tour, so I went back to like maybe the tour before that to see what their set lists were like, and I'm like, oh yeah, like they kind of cover their whole career, which is cool, which is smart, but they stick like all of the Remission and Leviathan songs at the end of their set, and it's like, oh yeah, you gotta sit through the weird
people want to hear.
stuff.
Yeah.
To get to the March of the Fire Ants, Mother Puncher at the very end. It's like, oh my god, I just stood here for 30 minutes probably at this point listening to songs I don't know. It's like, yeah, I'll pass on that. I saw them at the right time.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It is funny that when a band knows exactly what people want to hear the most, and they're just like, well, we gotta save that stuff for later, you know?
Yeah.
Which
I can't even imagine what it would be like to be in like the Rolling Stones when you're playing songs from like 1965 or something like that. Like, just, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? I just can't even imagine just playing a song that old, like that you've played like that many times. It's gotta feel weird, feel cool. I don't know.
It's a mixed bag, right? Like you have to be like, wow, something I made this long ago has had a lasting impression and people still want to hear it all these years later. That's got to sound cool, feel cool. But then also on the other side, you're like, but I made all this other stuff too. And like, I like all of that stuff. So what, wish that got a little bit more attention, but yeah, it is a weird kind of mix of feelings there.
Yeah. To be able to perform something that you've played a million times, it's just like the Rolling Stones as an example. It's like, how much energy are you putting into Brown Sugar? Like and you're like 80 years old.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I've seen Bruce Springsteen in twice in recent years, and like still puts his ass into it. Like, so it can be done, but like but even him as an example, like I've seen, like there's a super cut of like probably Born to Run of like live clips of him playing that song for like 40 years or whatever. And it's like the energy level from the beginning up through like the mid 80s to late 80s is like pretty great. Like they're firing on all cylinders, and then it like gets into the 90s and it's like, oh, it's just him playing it by himself acoustic, and it's just like way down. And then like he picks it back up in the 2000s like with the full band again, so it's like a dynamic, it's just like to muscle through it. But yeah, there's definitely people that phone in their hits.
Yeah, a great example is like I saw a clip of Joan Jett playing I Love Rock and Roll like recently, and it was the lowest energy performed song I'd ever seen. It was just like, you are over this song, aren't you? You've probably played it every single night of your life since 1979 or 9 or 80.
Yeah. But she's just like, I still love rock and roll, so I'm still gonna complain.
Just not as energetic.
Mhm. You just can't put a dime in the jukebox anymore.
Yeah. You can't put any money in a jukebox anymore. It's all tap.
What's a jukebox?
That's
It's a $2 credit.
Right.
I got
This
an
one already-
app on my phone so that I can load up songs on the jukebox at the dive bar.
Nice.
So 2002, we have previously covered this year a few times. So we went back to episode 280. We covered Piebald's We Are the Only Friends That We Have. Then episode 211 was our Christmas episode, and we did Joey Ramone's Christmas Spirit in My House EP. In episode 195, we covered Thrice's The Illusion of Safety, and that was a Patreon-sponsored episode. And then in episode 154, we covered The Roustabouts, The Only One, which was another Patreon-sponsored episode. And then episode 93, we did Common Riders, This Is Unity Music, as part of our Skagist celebration. We did that with the hosts of the podcast, Checkered Cast. Then episode 65, we did Hot Rod Circuits, Sorry About Tomorrow, and As Friends Rusts, a young trophy band in the parlance of our times. We did that with James of the podcast Where the Living Room Used to Be. And that episode also got As Friends Rust to post about us. We made like an offhanded kind of joke saying, is this EP new metal? And then As Friends Rust shared the episode and said, new metal, what do you think, to their fans, and got a lot of hate comments from people being like, this is not new metal. Like, well, there's a little rap rock going on.
I think that's a valid question.
Yeah. And then episode 18, we did My Chemical Romance's I Brought You My Bullets, You Brought Me Your Love. And yeah, so we've hit 2002 quite a few times at this point.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys, if you talk about it also, but I did right before I got on here. I was like, what else came out in 2002? Because I'm just not good, like right off the top of my head. So I just took out keyword punk from Rate Your Music, and yeah, going down like that top 40. I mean, there's a bunch of albums that I'm really into. That's what it's like. I guess maybe we'll get into it more, but I mean, like I like hardcore. I listen to hardcore and punk and all that stuff, but it's just like, yeah, it's like not all I listen to, and it's in fact like maybe just like a part of what I listen to. It's like when I'm in the mood or like that kind of thing. Most especially, it's something that I just love to play more than anything. Because yeah, I was like looking at it in 2002. If it's all right, if it's not unfun to talk about, had just in that first page, Queens of the Stone Age, Songs for the Deaf, Wilco, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. These are the ones that like stuck out to me that I'm like, hell yeah, like these are so good. Beck, Sea Change is like one of my favorite albums ever. What else was in there? Pedro the Lion, Control, Godspeed You Black Emperor, Sigaros, Flaming Lips. I mean, there's like a bunch of really good stuff in there. But we want to keep it punk. Some of those are punk, I think.
So you sound like us then, because Dylan and I are very, very, very liberal with our use of the word punk. Like we apply it to everything.
Same, yeah.
Yeah. I think we apply it, I guess, more in like an attitude or like a background type of setting for a lot of artists. But yeah, it's one of those cases
I think
of
that
like
Sea Change is a punk album, and I'll tell you why. Because that's an album where he like everyone had like this idea of what Beck was, right? And then he's just like puts his middle finger up and makes that album like the saddest record you've ever heard in your life. Like just the entire thing is just like this one mellow plane of just mood, I don't know. Like I just think that's kind of punk for an artist to be like he's like a Bob Dylan or a David Bowie. Like each album is just kind of like all right, I'm this now, and like all of my fans better just like follow me or I'll get new ones or whatever. I don't care. I'm doing whatever I want, and that attitude is very punk.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we went with the punk angle for this show because that's just kind of like the area that we feel like we have our most like musical knowledge in. But yeah, we bend the genre tags a little bit. We've done records before where it's just like, yeah, why not? We'll do that. It's it's technically not a punk record, quote unquote, but I don't know. It kind of fit the spirit of our show. So yeah, it's more just like a catch-all kind of term that we tend to use. But Yeah.
And you say punk adjacent, so I think that covers a lot.
Yeah, we do. We've done episodes where like we covered something and more early on, and people were like, "This isn't punk music," and their definition of punk was so much more narrow and like, came out in the 80s only or 70s only kind of like approach. But yeah, people are funny with genres.
Yeah, like getting blasted for calling the band new metal. Which band was it? As Friends Rough.
Yeah, it was like their last EP they put out too, and it was just like it was kind of like an offhanded little like jokey comment that we made, but
yeah,
if you listen to that, you can hear where we're coming from.
Yeah, it was a joke that I was making, and it's very much like in the spirit of like how I could make a similar joke about quicksand, where it's just like there's a groove to it that it feels like it's coming from alt metal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of him calling us out, he had his fans. He sicked his fans on us. Well, we've talked about quite a few albums that came out in 2002, so I guess we can go ahead and move on a little more. So I gave you the year 2002, and you selected for us to discuss Document Number 12 by Page99 and Majority Rule. And I have
the first split you guys had on a show.
No, we've done. I'm trying to think. What others? We did a special episode. We did like a top 10 splits episode at the tail end of last year, and then we did a long time ago. We did a split with. It was like in an older version of our show. We used to do albums and EPs in an episode, and we did one split. It was like a Sprainerd and Sundial split. Dylan, do you remember any other splits we've done? Like a whole episode on though?
No, actually, I was trying to think of like what. Yeah, it would have only been in those older episodes where we did the. I guess like the split LP is not quite as common, and it's definitely like the majority of split LPs kind of come from really like the scene that we're gonna talk about with this record. So like, not much that comes to mind because we didn't do the Faith Void split until we put it on our split episode. So. Yeah, I don't know. We haven't really landed on those. They don't come up very often, and we don't look at the EP charts that often anymore. So
yeah. So this is, I guess, technically this is the first episode. We're devoting an entire episode to a split record. So yeah, that's cool. That's very cool. And what a split to kick it off with. I have some stats on the bands and records, so let me run through these real quick. So this record was released July 23rd, 2002 on Magic Bullet Records. Page99 were from Sterling, Virginia, and they formed in 1997. And instead of going through like histories of each of the bands, I'll just kind of say where this split came out in relation to each band's discography. So this is number 12. So obviously it was released between Document 11 and Document 13. But those are, I believe, the Document 11. I thought I had it written down, but I think that's a shorter. Let me look that real quick.
Yeah, I think Page99 just kind of did that they just kind of numbered each of their releases, right? Like Coalesce kind of did a similar thing. They didn't always like name their things by the number, but
yeah,
they had their own catalog. Like Nine Inch Nails kind of does their own thing too.
Document number 11 is a collection of document number 3 and number 4 together. So that's what that is. And then document number 13 is the split that they did with Circle Takes the Square. So this is kind of like between releases. The last LP they had done was document number 8, though, which was the year before in 2008. So a lot of splits from Page99 there.
Yeah.
Well, they did two LPs in 2001, 7 and 8. And then they did a couple of other splits. The Process is Dead split, City of Caterpillar split.
Yeah. So personnel on this record is a lot of people. So Blake Midget on vocals, Brandon Evans on bass and vocals, Chris Taylor on vocals, George Crum on guitar, Johnny Ward on drums, Jonathan Moore on guitar, Kevin Longendijk on bass, and Mike Taylor on guitar. And so what is that? Is that 8? Yeah, 8 members of Page 99 at this time period, which is, I think, was kind of like the peak number for like regular number of members in Page 99. And then on the other side, we have Majority Rule, who are from Northern Virginia. That's how they describe it. And they formed in 1996. And the personnel on their side of the split is Kevin Lemieux on bass and vocals, Matt Michel on guitar and vocals, and Pat Broderick on drums. And it's really like a tale of two cities. It is Page 99 with 8 band members, and then Majority Rule with 3. And it's really fun to look at those dynamics. This split was released between their second album, Interviews with David Frost, which was released in 2001, and before their next album, Emergency Numbers, which came out in 2003. And then they do a little trading of guest vocals. So on the Page 99 side, on the song Tantrum, Matt Michel provides guest vocals. And then on the Majority Rule side, on the song Not in My Name, Chris Taylor does some vocals. And this was recorded by Mike Bossier, who was the producer and engineer who worked with Page 99 prior to this, as well as with Agoraphobic Nosebleed, the band Deceased, another band called Crestfallen, and Enemy Soil. And this record has a post-production credit from Ben Mellett, who had previously worked with both bands, as well as with Darkest Hour. So people that they're familiar with recording with is how they did this one. And yeah, I think that's it as far as stats kind of go with this record. But, well, the first thing I usually ask, though, is what made you choose this album for us to talk about?
Well, I guess like I said before, like wanting to pick something a little more under the radar. I don't know if it is, to your audience, it might not be, but is like to, Queens of the Stone Age and Hot Snakes.
Yeah.
So for that reason, Majority Rule is a band that I always really, really loved. My old band, the Minor Times, played with them a few times. I've just kind of always been a fan. It's a band that I've kind of like, would recommend to people, and really loved just like watching them live. They sounded just so good and so tight. Their drummer is just like amazing. I was just like a big, huge fan of Majority Rule back then, and I'm referring to it kind of in the past tense because I had to like go back and revisit this record, and I'm glad I did for this episode because it's something I haven't listened to in a long, long time. I kind of like I look at music as like music exploration for myself anyway, as like this like never-ending journey. Like I'm just kind of constantly always looking for new music all the time. Like when you approach me and your initial question was even like you sort of like, without just saying here you're doing this year, you're like, what do you kind of feel comfortable talking about, and I was like, well, I guess like formative years would be pretty good, and by that I usually just mean like teenage to early 20s like kind of years, because it just seems like that's when a lot of people have a lot of time like sitting down with records, or maybe just like the time period. It's just like that was like CD era where you just kind of like could have CDs in your car and you'd end up listening to something, over and over, like for that reason. Versus now, I've like such music ADD. I'm all over the place and I'm just constant. Because the other thing I said was just like I'm comfortable talking about music within like the past few years, because that's really what I'm listening to is like music that came out in the past few years. I'm just always like moving on, and I guess in the sense, I mean, I have my like personal classic records, but yeah, Majority Rule was just like a band that I really, really loved. And I did have this split too. I liked Page 99, and what was cool about revisiting it now is like, I listen to it now and I think I like Page 99 better now. Not that I like didn't like them before, but it's just interesting how like tastes and things change. I mean, I don't know if I like one better than the other, but they, like you said, they are different. Majority Rule is this 3-piece. Page 99 is double that. So Page 99 is just like really, compared to Majority Rule, who I said is like really tight and sounds for this style of music clean, just in the sense that they're really just like tight and together. And Page 99 is more like rambunctious and noisy and chaotic sounding. But then they're both in this, like, I guess you would say, screamo category, and we can get more into that later then too. But because I don't know if I'm like a screamo guy or anything. So
yeah, you touched on a few different things there. So as far as I like to ask our guests, what they're most comfortable with talking about time period wise, because there have been instances where we gave someone a year and they were just like, oh, I don't know anything from this year. And when people are coming on as guests, they kind of want to talk about something that they're familiar with, and that way they can, it's easier to talk about, something that you know really well, instead of just going in cold to something.
Yeah,
so that's
if you made me pick, I that would have been much harder. I would have just been like, I don't know, I would have just like freaked out, just like, I could talk about this, and then I could talk about this, and I could talk about this. I don't know. So I'm glad that you picked the year, because it's not something I could handle.
Yeah. And then when you mentioned newer music being, something that you listen to, I'm the same way. I'd say half or more of my regular music listening habits are newer records, like stuff that's come out. I usually try and listen to stuff as it comes out throughout the year. And so, yeah, I'm the same way as far as just digging into whatever's coming out. But funnily, our audiences don't really dig when we do the newest stuff, which is funny. But yeah, this is kind of our wheelhouse too, as far as what people like to hear us talk about, time period wise. But Page 99 and Majority Rule are similar stylistically, from the same scene. They would be considered the same genre. They played shows together all the time, but they just come at it at completely different approaches. Page 99 is chaotic, having 8 people on stage. I mean, there have been I have a friend who saw Page 99 probably around this time period, and he said it was some house show, and they blew the breakers 3 times because they just had so much gear, just cranking out power, and it just killed power so many times. And then they finally got it going to the point, and then the cops showed up and the show got killed. So it was just ugh. That's kind of what a Page 99 show is like. It's just way too many people on stage doing way too much. But it's part of kind of the legend, right? It's part of the thing that made them stand apart so much from so many of their peers. And then
it's really interesting in how many people have been in the band, how many people are in the band at any given time, and yet still managing to have the sound of Page 99. There's varying degrees of fidelity to the recordings across their career, but kind of from the beginning to the end, they sound like Page 99. In part of that's the vocals, there's the guitar tones, the drumming, there's always just something that is essential to Page 99 there in everything they do, despite how many different people come and go and how many different people are just playing at any given time. And you would think that different ideas would come across more, and not to say that they're one note and they don't have, there are a variety of different songs. This split is probably the biggest, variety to any Page 99 records, and kind of enters new territory for them. But I don't know, there's something of just in holding a collective space for what Page 99 is, and like having a aesthetic maybe like defined clearly, different people can enter that space and like kind of still arrive at the same or similar conclusions. It's interesting how they maintain that.
Yeah, I do think
Yeah.
a lot of that comes from the core of the band being, both the Taylors.
Yeah.
And it looks like George Crumb has pretty much always been in the band too. He's one of the other guitar players, and Johnny Ward on drums. So it looks like there's like a core of like 5 people that were on most recordings. So that's probably who is guiding that overall sound. But you're right, like they've had so many different members, mostly bass players, it looks like, but tons of different players, and they always sound like Page 99, which is in and of itself its own kind of sound. Like both these bands, I call them screamo bands, but they don't sound like anyone else. Like no other screamo bands sound like them either. It's kind of wild how unique they are in a scene, in a time period where there was tons of screamo bands and records, and like Orchid is around during this time period, and like there are lots of Orchid copycats. I can't say that there are very many Page 99 or Majority Rule copycats. Maybe it's just because what they do is so special that it's hard to copy. I mean, with Page 99, like that chaos, yeah, you can't manufacture that. Like that just has to come naturally, And then I guess with Majority Rule, it's just they're just one of the tightest groups like I've ever heard. Like they are immaculate. Like I got to see both of them when Page 99 did that reunion show in Richmond, and it was like 10 to 12 people on stage during Page 99's set, and Majority Rule played that show too, and they were perfect. Like they sound like the record, just way louder. But yeah, they know their stuff, they know their songs inside and out, and they're so good, so unique sounding.
Yeah, I think Page 99 and Majority Rule are like the two bands that sound the most like each other, like within that scene and genre. And they don't sound like each other.
Yeah,
it's almost just like on paper you can say like, oh yeah, they do a lot of drawn out, like kind of building climactic stuff, and they have just like really raw, like shrieky vocals, not even shrieky, just like gurgly vocals, and like they have just like really, really intense, like almost like black metal kind of tones and tonalities. Like, but yeah, Page 99 is the chaotic version of it, and then like Majority Rule is like the rehearsed, precise version of it, and that difference in like tightness creates this massive difference in sound.
Yeah, and I think like you probably find that in like when sounds are born. I mean like if we're gonna call them like screamo, like this scene and everything, this is kind of like, I think anyway, like kind of like the birth of it, the kind of like where it kind of started. I mean, it's like way far off from like what screamo became in like a mainstream they're nothing like I don't know, like My Chemical Romance or something like that, that's like so far removed. So if this is like the start like of that term, it's like I mean, we can get like, labels are like so funny, and why people get so upset about like calling the one band new metal or whatever, but like, yeah, I mean, like the like when Nirvana came around and they just kind of like label it, okay, like any band that's like playing with guitars, they're all called grunge, but Nirvana sounded nothing like Stone Temple Pilots, or Pearl Jam. They were all completely different, but they were all lumped within that same category. And I think, yeah, that's what it is. It's like just kind of true to like when a genre or something is new or birthed, everyone's so different because they came from different places and kind of like joined, and then like everyone like outside of that heard like that sound within that scene, which is like so cool that it's all like that DC, Virginia area. I love that too, that like scenes can just be like built out of an area, like that grunge was like all out of like Seattle area. Just so neat how that can happen. But yeah, but it's neat then too how like there's all these like copycats or whatever. after the fact.
To your point where you're talking about how screamo kind of diverges and becomes something different throughout the years, I just pulled up 2002 screamo records, and we have this record. Of course, we have like City of Caterpillar. Speaking of Virginia, we have there's an Orchid self-titled record that year. There's Joshua Fit for Battle. A lot of that kind of stuff. Funeral Diner, like that style of screamo. But also that same year, there is the Alexis on Fire self-titled album. There is Under Oath's The Changing of Times, the My Chemical Romance record that we talked about. So like this might even be ground zero for that like splitting of whatever people started to call screamo. And then everybody on the internet started calling this kind of screamo as like scrams, which was just a spin on the real emo meme of, where people are like, real emo started out of Revolution Summer. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was a way to differentiate. Go ahead.
What's the Thursday record from this time period that is kind of like...
Is that the ground zero?
The ground zero for like everybody doing that. And everybody.
Let's see. What do they have in?
That's a good call, though.
Full Collapse, 2001?
Collapse is 2001. Okay,
yeah. That's kind of... that is probably the that's when we start to get the more Hot Topic, Warped Tour version of screamo. People just started calling stuff screamo because the band members screamed in a song, and it was that just kind of became like the nomenclature of the time, where people were calling Linkin Park a screamo band. It's like, I mean, I guess he's screaming, but Linkin Park has nothing to do with Orchid,
Yeah.
Which, I mean, Thursday I think is typically like, that starting point of that genre, which at this point it's like most of the people playing screamo don't even like being called screamo.
Yeah,
it's just the term that was getting used. And then Thursday is like, oh yeah, we listen to screamo bands like Page 99, and I'm sure they're like name checked like true screamo bands because that's what they were listening to, but they were also listening to like Refused and At the Drive-In, and
and those bands were probably Thursday, Refused and At the Drive-In were probably the bands that were the inspiration for that shift in sound. But Thursday, they're real heads because they did that split with like Envy, like they're in 2009, well past their peak. So it's a funny term that people who are way deep into music know the difference. But
it's a funny term that like no one ever really liked, and then it spun off worse terms that people like even less.
So with this record, do you remember the last time you listened to it before, or at least like a rough estimate of when you would have heard this the last time?
I'm sure there's somewhere in between, but I would say 2002.
Yeah.
I mean, not really, but like, you know what I mean? Like maybe years around then.
Mm-hmm.
And then, listening to it now, like I'm saying, like, it's just like maybe like here and there, like maybe but like really not much because I'm always like listening to something new. I mean, like more on that too is like, so the band I did before the Minor Times was called Inkling, and we were, this was like my high school band. So we were just kind of a mess of a band as far as the sound goes. Cause we were like blown away by Coalesce, but then we also loved like the Deftones or something. And our band was like, somehow like that, like we did these like Coalesce parts, and then it was like we started singing all of a sudden. But so I don't know. So I guess because of that reason, like we played like screamo shows, or I don't know. And then so 2002 is when the Minor Time started. And I mean, at that point, it's like I've played like a lot of hardcore shows, and we've done like tours and everything. And I guess these bands like Majority Rule, Page 99, like appealed to me because they weren't like I was never super into like the chuggy tough guy kind of hardcore. So these bands appealed to me because they were, and I guess why people give them this other genre like name, because they were just like more melodic musically, but then they were also like noisier, and I don't know, like, you know what I mean, like to me it's like not even a comparison to say Majority Rule or Page 99 is anything like Earth Crisis or Hatebreed or something, you know. But of a larger umbrella, it's all hardcore, I guess. But so as far as like hardcore music goes, and especially like back then, like these were the bands that like appealed to me, because I was just like tired of seeing like the all right, here comes like our breakdown like part, like hardcore bands, you know, bands that still you hear all the time now.
Yeah, there is. I could see that. I could see that being like, it's just different enough. It's like, it's still loud, it's still heavy, it still comes from the same roots of loud and heavy music. But yeah, there is something completely different about the way that these bands play. Like, there's not this like set rules of like, all right, now here's our mosh part, like here it comes, and then here's our two other mosh parts in the same song.
Yeah, because back then, like a DIY hardcore show, you would have just like this mix of hardcore bands, but like they could all be like rapidly different. So yeah, that's why like a band like these guys were the ones that I preferred hearing, because so many of the bands that we played with were not that.
Dylan, do you want to run through your like personal kind of history with this record and these bands?
Yeah. So like Page 99 is where I start with these two bands, and pretty early for me diving into screamo. I definitely was a Scrams kid, and late high school and into college. So like I was kind of getting into that stuff, and like I think Circle Takes a Square was definitely pretty early one for me to check out, and maybe some Hot Cross. And our friend Grant from Bitter Melody Records, he burned some CDs with some Page 99 stuff on it. And I want to say it was like 5 and 7. And he also burned like the One Swarm LP for me, like at the same time. They might have even been on the same disc. So I started with Page 99 pretty early on as a teenager, like, and loved it. Like, I was like, this stuff sounds so cool, like so dark and like and menacing and cathartic. And so I kind of like branched out into their discography from there, just kind of like listen to different things, whatever I could find on blog spots and download. And I think maybe like kind of ran a natural course of that with Page 99. I don't think that I ever was like complete. I don't think I ever exhaustively, because there's definitely stuff that's like a live split, or, like some stuff that's just really raw that I couldn't quite get into. So like I kind of stopped exploring, and I mean, it wasn't even like, oh, I'm done with Page 99. It was just like, I have enough Page 99 at this point, I think. And like, let me go listen to other screamo bands and like download to different bands. And Majority Rule was one that I think I came to them a lot later in my exploration of screamo. It would have been in college, I feel like, and like pretty far into college, when I first downloaded Emergency Numbers and listened to that record and David Frost, and then probably finally came to like the Page 99 Majority Rule split. Like, I feel like I didn't have this split until after I had already stopped exploring Page 99 and gotten into the Majority Rule, like over a course of like 4 years probably. So it was a late to arrive at this split, and I think that it's one of those records that when I look back at like screamo as a genre, and like I think of these two bands as being really exemplary and like one of a kind bands, some of the best of the genre, and them being on a split together sounds like that would be my favorite thing in the world. But it's because of how I arrived at it so piecemeal over years. It kind of just has always been one of the last few things that I reach for when I reach for those bands. So I've spent more time with it in recent years of going back to it and being like, that's what I should know better and listen to more often, just because of who it is and where they were in their careers.
So I came to, I try to remember, like, I never really had a big Page 99 phase. Like, they weren't a band that I listened to extensively. Like, they were definitely one of the bands that I think, Dylan, you listened to more than I did. That being said, I was listening to Majority Rule, I think, a lot earlier than you were. And the same friend who gave you the Page 99 stuff gave me the Majority Rule stuff. And so it's kind of funny that he did that.
It is.
You're here. You get Page 99. You get Majority Rule. Like, it is funny.
We'll come together at document 12.
We're the twins separated at birth.
Yeah.
Of Richmond screamo bands.
Yeah.
You're going to be raised by Majority Rule. You're going to be raised by Page 99.
So I spent more time with Majority Rule, and like Emergency Numbers, that was my go-to. Like, that's the record I listened to the most from them. Then I got into Interviews with David Frost later, and then I got to this one last. I don't know what it was about this one. It was just like it took the longest for both of us to get to. But I think it's funny we did that because I'd argue it's probably one of the best screamo splits ever, and that comes from two of the best screamo bands of all time, combining forces. So yeah, it is funny to me that it took us that long to get to that one. But yeah, it wasn't the one I went to the most. I went to Emergency Numbers more than anything, and then I didn't have a huge Page 99 phase. So yeah, I always liked Majority Rule's sound just a little more, and because I feel like you can feel the chaos on a Page 99 recording, and then you can feel like the tightness of a Majority Rule recording much better.
Yeah, did you say in the beginning that both of these, like all of the songs on this, were recorded by the same person, produced by the same person?
Yeah, it is. They were both recorded by the same engineer and both had the same post-production. So they clearly, let's see if we can find like where they recorded it. I bet it's the same studio. Let's see. Let's go to Discogs. Document number 12. Oh, that's Bandcamp.
It's funny, like back then, it's like, yeah, it's just, I would like sit with all of my like CDs, like when I'm listening, I'm like sitting with the thing open, like reading the credits, reading the lyrics, like all that stuff that just like doesn't exist anymore. You know what I mean? So like maybe I knew that back then, but just hearing that now, it's just like, oh, like I would have just thought they recorded separately and then just put it on the same thing.
Yes, it tends to be how it goes usually with a split. Yeah, it was recorded at Oblivion Studios, April 2002, and I think Oblivion is in like Massachusetts as well. So they didn't even go with someone local. They went out of state to record together. Oh no, Maryland, excuse me. So a little closer than Massachusetts, but not quite as far. But yeah, that is funny.
That's still within the wheelhouse. Yeah. I love that about that whole scene too, or any scenes in general, how like they're incestuous and all the bands are always just guessing on each other's things and recording with the same people. It's always really cool.
And it's kind of still like that too. Like a lot of the Richmond bands I know, they all collaborate a lot. They all use a lot of the same people. And yeah, Richmond's a cool city. I've only been there once. No, I've been there twice. But like one time I spent like a pretty good amount of time there. It's like a week little trip we stayed there, and yeah, there's a lot in Richmond. It's got a cool vibe. I've always said that like, it would be one of the southern cities that I would move to if I was moving to like a bigger place, just because there's a lot there.
It's also, I always consider it like that dividing line of like it's either where the South starts or like right after Richmond is where it starts. I don't know. I always think of Richmond as like the line.
Yeah. It was Richmond the capital of the Confederacy? I think it was.
Yeah.
So,
it was. Yeah. So in that sense too, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Which is very funny to
we
think of.
We should learn our Civil War history now that we're going to have another one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Richmond's also a big cigarette city. So that's a very southern distinction,
Yeah, right.
to be a city built on cigarettes.
So I guess revisiting it, what did you think of it?
Yeah, so revisiting it, like I said, I like Majority Rule, or I mean Page 99, like turned my head like a lot more than I did before. Like I think this was the only thing I had by Page 99. I was trying to think. I was like, I know I had one other thing, and then when I was looking at everything else that they put out, I was like, oh, I think I was thinking of City of Caterpillar. Like I was just confusing the two bands. Like I just put they were just like the same band in my head, which is not fair at all, of course. So yeah, so revisiting, I was just like, this rules. Like the Page 99 stuff on here is awesome, you know. And another thing I think that kind of struck me though, for both of the bands, I was kind of just like, I'm not like crazy on these vocals. Like I kind of like grew out of the like higher pitched like kind of scream at one point. So I mean, all of that is like just like a taste thing, you know. Like if you interviewed me in 2002, I would have just been like, yo, Death Cab for Cutie is amazing, you know what I mean? Like this, like they just at that time they just put out, I saw this right after the Photo album came out, so this was like the height of my like Death Cab fandom. Those first 3 records I was like in love with, you know. Like I said, if you interviewed me then, I would have been like, Ben Gibbard is like the best songwriter right now, you know. And I hate his voice now. I can't stand it. Like, so, you know, just taste in it and things like evolve and change. Not that I like hate these vocals, but as far as like I don't like a heavy music goes, it's just not like the style I'm as into anymore. But they still sound like we said, like noisy and chaotic, and they still sound really just like pissed off and angry. I mean, that's always really like, as far as heavy music, that's really all I'm looking for. Is I want to hear something that sounds like pissed off and angry. Like that's because that's like what first got me into it all to begin with. You know what I mean? I was looking through your episodes. I saw you guys did an episode on Dead Guy, Fixation of a Coworker. Like that record was just like a life changer for me. It was just like, this is the angriest thing I've ever heard. I absolutely love this. And yeah, I'm always looking for that kind of thing where I like it's just like something that legitimately sounds like these people are really, really angry and they have something to say about it.
Well, there's that intelligibility to a degree, like the human quality of it. I can definitely relate to what you mean about like the raspy like style of vocal and being something that like I've definitely drifted away from. I don't listen to, you know, I mean, like in general, I don't listen to a lot of metal anymore, and so like I've definitely just kind of gone away from the death metal style vocals, you know, generally speaking, or at least for like a really long stretch of time, to where like I really didn't want to hear anything that had vocals like that. And like I would say like Page 99, Majority Rule, and like certain other bands that were like probably really formative to me were maybe the exceptions to like, okay, when I want something that's like that, I have those bands and I don't have to like, you know, listen to metal to get it. Like I can get something that's more engaging musically to me, you know, at that point in time. It's definitely like a style of vocal that I'm still not super interested in hearing from new bands. I mean, it's a style of vocal that I don't think is super popular with anybody past a certain point. So at least like, you know, the Majority Rule and Page 99 style of vocals especially. But
it's kind of a product of its time, don't you think? Like there was a lot of bands that did like that kind of style of scream. Like, I mean, even like Botch, like, yeah, like kind of just like, and Coalesce too, like they just kind of changed their vocals like from like a higher pitch to a lower pitch, you know, from one record to the next. It was all of a sudden like, oh, like you know, they do vocals like this now. And my band, The Minor Times, we did the same thing. Like our first EP, his vocals sound entirely different from then. It was just kind of like I guess that's what I meant by like a taste thing. Like it kind of just tastes evolve and you just kind of say like, yeah, I don't like this anymore and get into something else.
It is funny because I've never really thought about how this particular vocal style kind of fell out of fashion, because it was way more common in like the 2000s. And then there was a point where it it turns into like more like standard hardcore vocals, which are just a little bit more just like a more aggressive yelling. And then like screamo, like newer screamo tends to go in that higher like orchid type screaming. So like
Yeah, just like full on shrieking, like
yeah,
not doing anything close to like the false chord kind of like metal vocal that honestly is better for your voice, but
yeah, easier to pull
something
off. Yeah,
that you do for longer. Like it's why someone like Jacob Bannon can still do that voice,
yeah, yeah. Because I guess maybe that part of that comes from like maybe like metalcore is the genre that like carried that vocal style throughout the end of the decade. And everybody just kind of associates that kind of voice with more of that kind of music, and that stuff is not really like that popular. There's a little bit of a comeback happening right now, but like not to that level of vocal style. Yeah, that's funny.
I think a lot of those metal vocal styles is really what I would call them. Like they're just they feel so much more theatrical and artificial, and like they certainly like they can lend themselves to like certain kinds of lyrics, and it makes sense to do that. But when you're trying to like convey, more grounded human experiences, it's like this feels weird to do like gutturals about my feelings. And like unless you're going into like full on grindcore where you're just like, oh, the lyrics are super political, but you have to read the lyric sheet to know what they are saying.
Yeah. One thing I noticed about this record is that in the past, I probably would have leaned more towards the Majority Rule side just because it's the band I preferred more. But revisiting it, I really dug what Page 99 was doing on their side of the record, which from what I read, like from reviews around the same time period when the record came out, was a shift for them sonically. Like this is credited as being like their most melodic record ever, because it was towards the end of their run too. They break up in like 2003, so like this is the number 12, and then like document 13 is the split, and I think document 14 is the compilation that collects all the singles. So like we're close to the end of Page 99 and Majority Rule. They put out Emergency Numbers in 2003 the next year, but I think they're done too fairly shortly after. But yeah, the Page 99 side really stuck out to me in a way that hadn't in the past. And this will be a weird comp that I don't think either one of you will hear what I'm saying, but I hear Pinback on the Page 99 side. It's that particular type of like Richmond's a Whole has that.
Yeah, what's the song that has like just that like harmonic ending? The ending of the song is just everybody's doing different like harmonic rhythms.
It could be Virginia. Is that one? Yeah, that one's like kind of post-punky.
Yeah,
my notes.
It's the last Page 99 song.
Yeah. Because I wrote lots of harmonics on that one. And it gets softer and then more melodic, and it's got like kind of
that could be a Pinback part.
Yeah, right? Like that song and Richmond's a Whole are the two that I kept hearing that kind of like that intricate style of like it's more I guess in like the guitar and bass and drums and how those are kind of working more together, and then the singing style is a little cleaner. So that's where I'm getting that Pinback feel. Like I doubt that was actually an influence on them for this, because I don't think they ever did anything like that.
No. I mean, I don't think it would be entirely unexpected for them to be listening to Pinback. I would say, like, when you look at what a lot of the guys like Page 99 did after this, like Malady, Harem, Pygmy Lush, like this is them leaning in that direction of a more post-hardcore sound and something a little more melodic and a little more put together. And like it's right. I mean, this being kind of at the end of the Page 99 discography, it's like, yeah, this is the transition point for them of doing like a late Unwound kind of influenced post-hardcore.
Yeah, I could see Unwound being an influence on this record, because Unwound were pretty big at that point and not that far from screamo,
And like, I think Unwound probably put out Leaves Turn Inside You in like 2001. That's definitely the record that I see a big influence.
Yeah.
Coming from.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, it's a very unique sound for Page 99. Like the Majority Rule side kind of sounds like Majority Rule. Like it's just kind of how they sound on pretty much all their records, except for that very, very first one, like in like '96 or whenever that came out. And actually, there's a lot of stuff on here that feels, on the Majority Rule side, that feels kind of like a teaser for what's to come on Emergency Numbers, especially on, what song is it that, These Hands. It's the second Majority Rule song that has that weird guitar effect thing that they use a lot on Emergency Numbers. That, like, is it an EBO? Is that what that is? That's what it kind of sounds like to me, where it sounds like it's like almost like you're playing harp or lap steel on like your guitar. But I know it's probably like a pedal or something that they're using.
It probably would have been an Evo because that'd be the easiest way to do it. I could see them just doing like swells. They were definitely into doing that kind of like weird, dynamic stuff and of like volume swells and a lot of like delay pedal manipulation, just like stretching the time, and you get that and like pushing the oscillation and then speed it up, that kind of stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if it was.
That is another thing that kind of stuck me about this listening now, was how much I loved like individual parts of songs. Like it was like, this part is like really, really cool. And then they go into a part where I would just kind of be like, I could delete that though. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that song Richmond as a Whole though by Page99, I always loved that song. Like I remember that song right off the bat. As soon like re-listening, it was just like, oh yeah, this song. Like that song is really awesome. And that song is like super interesting to me. Like listening to it again, I was just like, how did they even write this song? Because it's like they have all these members of the band, and each member of the band sounds like they're on like a different beat one, but somehow like all together it works. Like it's like such an interesting song.
Yeah, you have to wonder, like, was there somebody in Page99 who was like, all right, here's the song. Like they bring the song, or at least like the core of what the song is going to be. And then do they then start to contribute their parts? I mean, I don't know. I don't really know how the dynamic of that band worked or not. It was
yeah, exactly. With so many members, I mean, how does that work? Like I don't know, but that song, yeah, it like starts off like, first of all, when it starts, it just like starts like it's right in, like right away. So it almost starts like you're in the middle of the song already. And yeah, and to me, it's like such an odd song. Like it's almost like if they were like writing it, then it would be like, all right, drummer, just like play like this beat, right? And then it's just like, I'm gonna play this to it, and then and maybe it was written very collaboratively, because like I said, to me, it just sounds like everybody has their own like individual thing. And it's like the drummer is keeping like this really like solid beat, but then there's like this like melody that goes like over it, but like not really exactly like to the beat. It's like longer, and then the vocal line like follows that melody, but then there's a second vocal that's like countering it. And I don't know, it's like such like a backwards like dyslexic song to me, but it's like always been so interesting sounding.
It feels like they couldn't set out to write it that way. Like it has to almost have been just like jamming in the studio or in the practice space, and that's how they kind of came up with that. Because you're right, it doesn't sound like most of their catalog, and then even that, it's just very everybody's coming in to get to with these different parts. It has to be just like a, what if we did this? All right, cool. All right, I'm gonna play this part. It's just like it
is such a standout in their discography.
Here's my chord progression. Everybody else then just like find the space that in. It does, it definitely does feel jammed. It's like one of those times where a jam actually is like really cool to listen to. But yeah, it's definitely not, I have an A part and now we need a B part, and then we go back to the A part, and then here's the C part. It's not riffs that get stuck together.
Yeah, because even every time it goes to like the next part, I'm always like I never know like when it's gonna land. I don't know if you guys are that way. Like I just I don't know. Is the song like confusing and weird to everyone else? I don't know.
Well,
it's cool though. Like I don't know. It's so cool.
It stands out in their catalog as like being so really different, but it even stands out as being like one of their best songs too. Like I think people really love that song, and the name is really catchy. Richmond's a Whole. It's a good song title that kind of grabs attention. Yeah, it is fun. It is interesting to consider the world where they continue and they go in that direction more, because everything they did before seemed more to be servicing the like, we're gonna be loud, and we're gonna have like, you know, more riff focus. Like here's the riff, you know, and then here's like the wild vocals all over it. But yeah, a dynamic version of Page 99 is not really what you think of when you think of that band.
Yeah, but super dynamic on this split.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think the Page 99 side is the stronger of the two, which I wouldn't have said a few years ago. I don't think, just because I'm such a massive Majority Rule fan.
Yeah, same here.
I do think that the choice that I don't know if theatrical is the word to describe Majority Rule. Cinematic, I guess, is kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. They do these things with their music and their albums that are just like, it feels like they write it from a more big piece, like way back, like we're gonna start our side of the split with just static for like a really long time, like before the song actually kicks in.
Yeah.
And it's like they have like plotted out what the entire like side is going to sound like, which I feel like they did with Emergency Numbers. It's just very much like, all right, now here's our really long, like 10-minute song that's like super atmospheric and a lot of different things going on in it. Yeah, they approach it in a more classical way, like the way how classical music is more composed than. I'm always amazed. I always feel like man, they have like this one big piece of music that they have managed to just chop up into tracks where you can play them live too. You know, they don't have to be in the same order that they were put on the record.
Yeah, everything Majority Rule did feels very orchestrated like that.
Yeah,
it was just like the whole thing from beginning to end, and like it's not that it like all entirely runs together, because like the individual parts all stand out on their own as their own unique things, but it just comes together in a total package that very fans from this time period, or really ever, do.
Yeah,
it feels like a post-rock record.
Yeah, there is a post-rock element to their sound that's on the record. Like it's there. You know, I guess that comes from maybe Envy. I would imagine they're probably inspired by Envy, and they did a lot of that kind of stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if they were into like stuff like Explosions in the Sky, you know, that kind of stuff. Mogwai maybe.
Mogwai. Yeah.
Godspeed. I bet there's some Godspeed in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah. There's something really like serious about their sound. I think which was neat about like when the first time our band played with them, the first time I saw them, and maybe just being like such a big fan of them too, like can't wait to see them and all that. It was just funny to me that in between their songs, I just remember the drummer like eating pizza, just like he's like sweating, like, you know, we're in this like small sweaty little place, probably some like VFW or something, I don't remember, but like that was like the one thing that like stuck out to me is like, he just had this like plate of pizza like by his hi-hat, and like in between songs he's like taking bites and then just like going back to, and the dude hits like really hard, like it's like a workout playing in that band. And so that was just like really, really funny to me to music that I took like very seriously, you know.
And maybe he needed the pizza.
He's probably just hungry, you know, or he's just like, you know, by the time it arrived to them, it was like, oh crap, now we have to start playing, but I'm really hungry, you know. It was probably something like that. Like, damn it, just bad timing.
It is also funny to me to think of like when I saw them live, like it feels like he would be the one in the band who would be like the least serious out of the group, because I feel like Matt is like, whoa, very, very serious, you know. That is a very funny image of like this like cathartic blow off to a song, and then you're just like eat this pizza real quick.
Hardcore bands in general,
the crust hanging out of his mouth. Oh, I'm gonna chew on this for the rest of the song.
Hardcore bands in general, like it's just like funny like that, because like they sound real like serious and you know, and then you meet the guys and they're just like sweetie pies, you know. like I talked about Dead Guy Fixation on a Coworker, like when I met the singer like years later, you know, this was always just like a monumental like album for me, and it's always like, this is the most, like if I ever met this guy, he'd probably just like punch me for looking at him, you know, like that's how angry he sounds, you know. But he just like he was smiling, and we had a conversation about like, I don't know, the weather or something outside. Like it was just like, this can't be the same guy. Like you're supposed to just like hate everything, aren't you? Like that's what you sound like.
It's funny. It seems like the only ones who do kind of keep that tough persona when the music is, over, is like your New York hardcore, like your Cro-Mags, agnostic front type bands, and or like your Boston like tough guy hardcore bands. Like those feel like the ones where you're like, oh yeah, you're like this off stage too, Like,
Yeah, I mean,
the ones that
I
are
like.
clearly there to get in fights.
yeah.
The goal is to hit people, and then
Yeah.
and not just like, oh, this is a creative outlet.
Yeah, I mean, I got into like hardcore punk, scene because it was like me and other kids. We were like the outcasts from school. The outcasts being from like the popular kids, the mainstream kids were like the more like jock type that plays sports and plays football and things like that. So going to hardcore shows and playing in punk bands and stuff like that, like that was supposed to be my escape from it all. And I guess that's why I was just like never appealed to those like tough guy chuggy hardcore bands, because it was just like I came here to like get away from you guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like the jocks invading an art space. It's kind of a funny approach. Yeah.
And I don't want to like totally put all that down either, because it's just like I did get into hardcore, like like the first like true like hardcore band I heard was probably like Earth Crisis or Hatebreed, and I was just like, this fucking rules, So like I get it, but if you're gonna like come to a show, invade the space, if you will, just to punch people and kick people, like come on.
Yeah, it was like a weird little mix too, because a lot of that stuff is like vegan and straight edge too, but it's like that type of dude you would not associate with like veganism. It's just kind of funny how the Earth Crisis attracted like a meathead audience.
Yeah. That's what was so neat to me about it. It was just like, okay, yeah, so they sound like this tough, but when you like read their lyrics, like it's not that way at all.
Yeah.
I have passion for all living creatures, unless you get the words wrong. The show, and then you're my target.
Unless you get in my way in the pit. Well, I think we probably need to wrap it up here soon, but I guess we can get, does anyone have any like final thoughts about this record they want to say?
I like that it's sequenced the Page 99 to Majority Rule side, at least on the streaming version. I mean, it's split. You can choose your own adventure, but
yeah,
like they uploaded it that way, laid it out that way, and like titled it that way.
Yeah, and I had the CD, and I'm pretty sure the CD was that way.
Yeah. And it is titled Document Number 12, which is like, it's their thing, is to do the documents.
Yeah, I wondered about that too. If like Page 99 was just probably like, we have to kind of do this. Is that all right? And Majority Rule is probably like, we don't care. I imagine that's how it went down.
Yeah, because there's a lot of splits in their catalog, and they managed to get that. Every record is titled like that. Some of them have like names, right? Is that true? No, maybe not. They are just called Document.
I don't think they ever did a title.
The Circle Takes the Square one is Document Number 13, Pyramids in Cloth, the Perpetual Motion Machine. That feels like Circle Takes the Square.
Yeah. I was going to say that would be the ones. Circle Takes the Square would be the ones where like, no, this has to fit our whole like theses.
Circle Takes the Square. Yeah. Versus all the other ones, it's like with like a 3-piece or something. So it's like, look, there's like 7 of us, 8 of us. Are you gonna like try to fight this?
Though it looks like the City of Caterpillar split, it's called A Split Personality. So that's a little bit. It's got a little title on it
more
too.
Puns.
Yeah. But yeah, that other one sounds like, no, that's what Circle Takes the Square is going to call this record. So yeah. But yeah, I can see Majority Rule just being like, yeah, whatever, we don't care. Because they've known them for a long time too, so similar scenes, but
just another document in the scene, in the Richmond area scene.
I enjoy this record quite a bit too. We almost talked about it on our top splits episode that we did, and I think we wound up it just got like just bumped off like right at the end, and for something else. But it's definitely one of the better screamo splits of all time, and just a great split in general. So yeah, it's a good choice. Good choice. We appreciate it. So Brian, thank you for doing the show. We really appreciate having you here. And where should we all follow you online? All that kind of good stuff.
Desperate Living is streaming everywhere, and I always like to recommend people to Bandcamp. I think Bandcamp is awesome. So we're at livingdesperate.bandcamp.com, which is annoying. Yeah, there's like other people with that band name.
Yeah.
Band names are stupid. It's kind of just whatever, it happens. Yeah, and like we're on Instagram and all that. Like I think on Instagram we're like desperate.living. So again, another annoying thing. But that's where we're at there. Maybe we have a Facebook. I don't do like the social media stuff. Mad props to Scott if he's listening for putting all that work in.
Well, I'll make sure to hunt down the links and include those in the show notes so people can check it out. And yeah, go pre-order the record. It's available now from Noise Reel and should be out within the next month or so. So, all right. I think that will do it. So thank you all so much for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.